Hello, everybody. Welcome to Kin Stretch. Today, I want to go over some knee, hip, and maybe some ankle stuff. Really, what it's going to focus on is I've been dealing with a little bit of discomfort and pain kind of down in my foot on the inside and the outside part of the ankle. I've been dealing with some discomfort and pain out here on the outside part of my tibia and kind of behind the leg, and then also a little bit on the inside part of the hip. All right. Um, and I think that I know kind of what it's related to, and that's running. And I think it may be related to these new shoes that I got, even though I've had that pair before while running. These these kind of have changed my gait a little bit. I might be tying them a little too tightly. So I want to take you through some steps that I take to kind of figure out what's going on with an injury or a discomfort that you may have. All right. So the first step is, I think, where do I feel the pain the most? And that's mostly down here in the ankle. Okay. And so I'm going to start off with an ankle car there. All right. So I'm going to push down on the gas pedal. And I'm using this ankle car to observe and feel what my ankle is telling me. And I'll go around twice just to make sure what I'm feeling is not an anomaly. All right, so on this rotation, I am feeling some closing angle discomfort right here on the top part and inside of my foot. And then I feel it here on this big tendon that comes down. And that's about it. Let's reverse direction. So again, right now I'm just collecting data points to see what's up. All right, it's not the same on this side. I feel a big stretch here actually. And down. All right, so I think the most of the stuff that I'm feeling is kind of on the bottom and inside part of this foot. And what happens is you have tendons that kind of run down here underneath and kind of attach on the inner part of some bones here and then underneath your toe to help flex and extend your toe. So I'm also going to look at the toe here to see my mobility in that big toe. Passively, it looks like it extends all right. Actively, I can hold it up there without any pain. Pushing down feels all right. I can bend it, that feels all right. And now I'm just going to start poking and prodding on the bottom part of my foot. And right there. All right, so what am I looking for? What I'm looking for is really any kind of sensitive area, spot that feels different than other spots, kind of right there. And I'm only poking a little bit. I'm not going to create a ton of pain. I'm just going to kind of hold that spot, and I'm going to move my big toe. Open and close. I can flex and extend. Now I can even get some ankle work into that too. And I might need to move my hand about a centimeter each way just to kind of remain on that spot. I'm breathing. You can do this slowly. When you are doing any soft tissue manipulation, I don't think it's necessary that you cause pain with how much pressure you're doing. However, for some extreme people that really like that feeling of pain, it can sometimes help them get relief. So I think that might be more based on personal preference. So push into this, into your skin or into any spot that may be injured based off of what you can handle. All right. Good. I'm going to come out of that. And now I'm going to retest this ankle car. Certainly feels a little bit better. Not as much closing angle pain. Let's reverse it. So next, what I'm going to do, after I kind of did that, I'm going to look at the exact kind of opposite side of that tissue. So if I was just kind of poking into there, I'm going to look at stuff that's up here and even out here under the lateral malleolus or the outside ankle, and just kind of prod around and see how stuff up here feels. Right there. It's a little tender. You can also go to that tendon that was feeling some stuff. That actually feels fine. But yeah, why the exact opposite side? Well, basically, our joints kind of open on one side and close on the other. So those have to be in communication with each other. Yeah, right there. When I go down like that, this is now open angle, and I feel a big stretch, and this is tender as I press into it. And I'm just going to hold that there. Why the opposite side? Because if I feel some closing angle stuff here, what I should be feeling is open angle stuff here. So I'm going to check out that tissue and just see how it responds to touch. Right now I can see it's a little tender as I'm poking into it. And I'm going to continue with some ankle cars while I do this, poking into it. Breathing. And here I found an ultra sensitive area of the car, so I'm just kind of rotating my foot through that area. And that kind of feels better. Ooh, right there, yeah. And that kind of feels better already. Good. All right, so step one, when dealing with any kind of pain, in this case, I'm dealing with kind of some ankle discomfort, probably based around my running. I'm going to do some ankle cars to find out exactly where I feel this, what angle my ankle feels this stuff at. 2, I will use my finger to kind of press into that area that's sensitive, and for me, it happened to be right under there. And then I'll do some movement from there of that tissue as I'm pressing into it. 3, I'm going to always check the opposite side of the joint. So under the foot on the medial side, top of the foot, lateral side. That's kind of about opposites. All right. Now, this isn't quite the same joint because this is obviously your foot and not your ankle. But, if you take the whole foot, you can see these are kind of diagonal or opposite from each other. All right. Next, I'm going to work my way up to the next joint up the chain. So sometimes you go down the chain, sometimes you go up the chain to look. I'm going to look up the chain because there's not much down the chain from the bottom of my foot. So if I know that I was feeling some sensitivity around here, this lateral malleolus, I'm going to follow the lines of tissue. And this is where anatomy kind of comes in, but I know that I have muscle groups called peroneals that run up and down here, also called peroneals. I've heard them pronounced both ways. And that run up and down the outer compartment of the leg. And now, for me in particular, I know that any time that I go with a hard E version of my ankle, my peroneals cramp. All right? So I know that there's something up with them, right? And I work on them occasionally when I'm on a slant board. And so now I work down here. Let's check upstream. And right up here on the fibular head. So if you look at your shin, you have a little bump on the front part of that shin. If you kind of go directly across, you'll find the fibular head, and you can find that by pushing the finger in, and you'll feel it kind of lip out. All right, right up in there, that's going to be an attachment site for the peroneals. And I can feel that that is actually pretty sensitive. All right, oh, there it is. I'm going to press into it. And from there, I'm going to do more ankle cars. And yep, that's doing something. Let's reverse directions. I can go even slower here. I think slower is always better, especially if you have the time. And if you don't have the time, you can go fast, but you might not get as much out of it. And like this just feels running down the whole outside part of my leg. I can feel I'm greasing the groove here in that range of motion. And every time it makes it a little bit easier for me to move my ankle. I've just moved my thumb about 1 centimeter, and I can feel that working a little bit more. And I'm just targeting sensitive tissue. Good, you can relax. So I just targeted some sensitive tissue in the leg. Again, you only have to apply as much pressure as you feel works. All right. Now, I just happened to notice, and I also noticed before I was playing around, with this stuff, that this hip likes to come in, and my foot, or my knee, I should say, likes to externally rotate. All right. And this actually happens a lot when I run. Right. So that hip internally rotates, knee externally rotates, and then my foot, it actually supinates, like so. Okay. So if I know that that's my position, what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to go other position. Externally rotate the hip, internally rotate the knee, and supinate the foot. And I want to see if I can do this even more. All right, so I got an externally rotated hip. I'm going to sit on top of this block to help me. So again, I just chose this position because I noticed that that was a position that my body goes into a lot when I run. And it probably means it's my go-to position. And so the opposite of that might be not working very well. Externally rotated hip, internally rotated knee, supinated ankle. I'm going to play with the ankle joint side to side, trying to maintain that. Internally rotated knee. That feels all right. Let's see, what's this feel like? So there, I get some pain in the outside part of the knee, kind of where I was playing along with that peroneal muscle up top. All right, but it's certainly not as bad as it was. And if you see my foot, it totally stretches out like that when I sit in this position. It pronates. Okay, so that's putting a lot of stress and stretch right there. Now, if I internally rotate the knee, that goes away. So that internally rotated knee might be a saving grace for me. Let's see if we can train knee cars from external rotation in the hip. So I'll go into my 90-90, and let's see if we can train some rotation of the knee. Let's just try a capsular car. I'm going to raise this foot up a little bit just because the pressure on the ground is hurting. All right, so externally rotated hip, Let's try some knee cars, just capsular cars from here, just rotation of the knee. I'm going to make this a little bit easier so I can focus on feeling that. I'm going to come here, and I still want to make sure that my hip is externally rotated, so I can push my spine up a little bit. So as I'm doing this, you can see Gertie's tubercle, the front part of my shin, should be rotating. And actually, when I'm internally rotated like that, I feel a big stretch in my hip. And that's something I've certainly never noticed before. So I'm going to try to play now, internally rotated there, and forward lean stretch in that 90-90 position. This is a passive stretch, and I can feel it all under my hip going into my knee. I'm going to keep promoting this internal rotation of the knee while holding this external rotation of the hip. And I'm keep finding that passive stretch that I'm feeling in the front part of that right hip. And how I do that is keep my chest up, keep the spine straight, keep gliding the chest forward towards the camera. Keep firing this medial hamstring muscle. So if I take my finger and I put it right under here, I should feel those hamstring muscles actively internally rotating. That is creating a nice stretch. Good. I'm going to come out of that, and I just want to see what happens. Go back. I'm just going to shake it out. I'm listening to what that knee joint is telling me. And now I will retest the most difficult position. And now I feel nothing in my knee. I actually feel stuff in my hip. Right out here, I actually feel a stretch out there. And I think I want to make that sensation of stretch go away. So I'm actually going to spend some time there, right? And then when I just unbend that leg, I can definitely feel stuff back behind this knee, still a little bothering me. But basically the gist that I want you to get out of this is you are using this joint by joint mobility system to work your way up the joints to see, okay, what is my limiting factor? All right. And so right now, I think it's still my knee and it's not my hip, because when I just did some work on the knee and sat here, it felt pretty good. And if I go hard internal rotation, it feels a little funky. I feel a lot of stretch and tension. All right. So I want to try a side lying, externally rotated knee car. So let's keep playing with this idea of hip external rotation, and a knee internal rotation is going to be important for me to not feel pain when I run. All right, the ability to do that. So I've never done this before. I'm just kind of figuring this out as I go. So I think I want to externally rotate my hip. I'm also going to abduct it. And from here, I'm going to try some knee rotations. All right, I got a better idea. I'm going to prop that open, externally rotate the hip, and I'm going to try some knee rotations from here. So I'm squeezing that block. Yeah,
that internal rotation definitely stretches something along the outside part of that hip. All right, remember, everything's all connected. It's kind of silly to say that, oh, I'm just working one muscle or one tendon, all right? I'm working kind of a whole line of tension. I'm going to try to put this together in a full knee car. So now I'm trying to stabilize the hip in external rotation while trying to do a full knee car. And this gives me insight onto what happens in flexion and extension. Yeah, so I found stuff, all right? Whatever you want to call it. I can feel that it becomes more tense here up in the hip as I internally rotate my knee. And you know what? My ankle does not feel much of anything right now, all right? So I'm willing to bet that it is rotation of the knee that needs some love in order to increase or decrease the pain while I run, right? So we just did some side-lying knee cars. Now I want to try to do some tibial rotation pals rails, all right? And I don't love this because it's quite difficult. It's quite difficult to not compensate, but we'll try our best here, all right? We'll see how we can set this up. All right, so here's the gist of what I'm trying to do. I'm going to try, I think I want to try it like this. I'm going to try to put my hip in a slight external rotation, all while trying to rotate my knee internally and trying to elicit some sort of stretch out here and kind of see what I can get today. All right. Pals contraction is going to be to try to externally rotate the knee. Rails contraction is going to be to try to internally rotate the knee more. They're both going to be isometrics. All right. So let's do some exploring. So I'm going to hold my ankle stiff and I'm going to try to pull into internal rotation of the knee and stick my elbow in here to keep that hip externally rotated. Now I'm just going to breathe. I'm going to encourage a little bit of internal rotation here. Let's see. So here's my tibia, the front part of my tibia. I can tell I am slightly internally rotated because this is more medial. This has come over. All right. So again, trying to encourage that rotation. I'm anchored here and I'm pushing out there. I might get a better shot if I come here. I like that better. All right. So let's just do short pals rails here. And let's go pals contraction. Lightly fire the external rotators of the tibia. So it's the outer part of the hamstring, more lateral part of the hamstring. Fire that stretched tissue, or that tissue that we were feeling kind of being stretched during some of our other moves. And now let's go into internal rotation of the tibia. Fire that hard, 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 hard. Right there is what I'm feeling. This hamstring kind of pulling me in, pulling me in, pulling me in. And relax. Let's go back to a passive stretch. So this is a short one because this is not an easy position to sit in and not an easy position to hold. All right. So what I would just do is I just shorten up my pals and rails so I do more of them. Good. I'm going to come out. See how that feels. It feels pretty good. You can definitely feel Still a little tightness in the knee, especially when I externally rotate. Yeah. So especially when I externally rotate that hip, there's just something going on in this knee still. I think I hit it on the head where I need to practice more internal rotation of the knee from an externally rotated hip and maybe do some soft tissue work here in the peroneals. All right. And also down at the ankle joint. Right. The key is to keep doing that once you find it. Right. And that's how you work your way up the leg through figuring out kind of an injury and a pain. All right, I want to go into some 90-90 internal rotation stretch of the hip. All right, so here, I'm going to spin. And this is something I've been working on recently with a lot of clients. And what I'm searching for is a stretch here in the hip pocket. So how do we find that? We have to first get set up in a nice 90-90 degree angle. This knee stays planted onto the floor. This knee stays planted onto the floor. And I'm going to rotate my torso and think about dropping this right butt cheek down to the floor. And if I do that properly, I will definitely feel a lot of torque build up in that hip. I'm not going to push it because I don't want to feel it in the spine at all. So I don't have to go very far. It's a tough position for me to rotate in, but I can definitely feel that working in the hip. Alexa, set timer 1 minute.
1 minute, starting now.
So we're going to do pails, rails from here. Right? Pails is going to be to try to externally rotate the hip. Rails will be to try to internally rotate the hip. So external rotation, you would think about lifting the knee up off the floor. Internal rotation, you would think about pushing the knee harder into the floor. I do not see this leg drift back or forward. All right. Staying locked in that joint through rotation. Actually, if I can lift up like this gives me a little bit more stretch and access just by kind of manually pushing that tissue there. Alexa, stop timer. All right, pails contraction. Let's think of externally rotating that hip. Start ramping up your pressure. You can place your hand there to press against. Breathing, pushing, ramping. Place your hand here to also feel that working. And now internally rotate that hip. So think about rolling this in, pushing that butt back a little bit more. Squeezing, more internal rotation, and rest. Good, I'm just going to hold this passive stretch for another minute or so. Just keep thinking, sinking this butt down. Don't let this leg come up. You want to keep that down. That's going to help stabilize the pelvis so our pelvis doesn't move and we focus on that hip moving. So in relation to what I was feeling out here, I'm not feeling any pain here. I am feeling a little stretch on the medial aspect of the knee.
which I think might actually help me. Good, we can rest. Because it will now open up some space there for me to do some more internal rotation. I want to do another set of knee cards right now. Nice, slow, controlled, high intensity. If you have a keen eye, you'll notice my foot tends to move on that internal rotation too, and my external rotation is a ton greater than my internal rotation. Another clue that internal rotation must be worked on the knee for me, for this painful area, right? Because basically my thought process is saying, hey, my knee wants to internally rotate when I run and it can't, so the stress is going somewhere else, down at the ankle or kind of up here in the hip. Okay. All right, let's switch sides. We'll go internal rotation stretch on this side. We'll sink backwards, trying to find a stretch in this hip pocket area. Oh, cramping already. That's interesting. I like cramps. Cramps typically mean you're going to a spot that you haven't been before and your body is like, whoa, what's that? So again, it's just kind of like an awareness. It gives insight onto what your body is feeling. I also just noticed the tibia on my left side here has much more internal rotation than my right side. It just kind of falls into internal rotation. See this? I can externally rotate it, internally rotate it. The other side was harder to do that. All right. So again, just more data points that I observe when I'm going through these different positions. I always come back to, okay, what's the relationship to the next joint over? And also, what's the relationship to the other leg, the asymptomatic leg, right? All right, patelis contraction, external rotation of that hip. Breathe, squeeze, be very targeted with your tissue. About 10 more seconds here before we go into rails contraction. 5, 4, 3, 2, and rails. Ooh. Keep that butt down. Try not to activate here. Feeling it right there. It's cramping a little bit. Play on the edge of that cramp. I don't want to activate so much that I got to come out of it. I'm driving my right knee into the floor, pushing that left butt down to the floor. Sorry, right knee and left knee into the floor. And relax. See if I can sink deeper into that. I don't know if the cramp's going to allow me to. It's still kind of lingering there. Breathe. And come on out of that. Oh. Right. Oh, that's some PALS rails for hip internal rotation. That again, I was just using to get insight into what's happening on the outer part of my thigh and in relation to my knee.
all kind of data point collections, because things are based on where the limb up and down is in space. Pain, is based on where the limb is up and down in space. So you got to test all these limbs around it too to see what's going on. All right, I want to get into butterfly position. And we're also going to think about the knee here. All right. And from here, my hips are in external rotation. And all I've done was I unflexed the hip joint like it is in when I'm in seated butterfly. All right. And I'm just going to breathe a few deep breaths here. And think about what I'm feeling in my hips and in my knees, how it's different on each side. So after a few deep breaths and really letting my body relax, some observations I had is that the right side, or the side that's presenting symptoms, has a more, feels more tightness in this position. It's not pain, it's just that right hip can't externally rotate as far. I think that shows itself. It may not, but I certainly feel a lot of tightness right here in that inner thigh. It's that spot right there. So feel that spot. I'm just going to breathe. It's much different than this spot. All right, so some line of tension in the abductors. I'm also going to go to the exact opposite side. Check that out. Specifically up in that hip joint, but then also on the side of the leg where I was kind of feeling stuff when I was doing knee rotation. And right there is tender. All right, so I know that these two opposite spaces are talking to each other here. I'm going to try to do a passive range lift off of external rotation here. So this is going to look like I'm just lifting my leg off the ground, but really what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to externally rotate this hip more, which would then leverage my right foot off the ground. In order to do this, I have to place my palms firmly on the floor. I have to drive my left foot through the ground. I got to clench my butt a little bit and irradiate through my body. And I'm going to think, let's spin the right femur more externally. And it leverages my foot off the ground. It also kind of drops my knee closer to the ground if I do that properly. And back down. And relax. When I lifted it off, I felt no pain in the outer portion of my knee. But when I was going down, I felt a lot of stress on the inner portion of my knee. Let's try it again. 3, 2, 1. Lift. Think external rotation of that femur. More. And down. So another way to tell if you're doing this right is from the side. I really shouldn't see this knee go up, right? It should stay level. If it's a rotational movement, it shouldn't come up like that. All right, so I'm going to see if I can see myself in the camera doing this. 3, 2, 1, irradiate,
That was better. I think. Camera's far away. That was good though. That felt different than the other ones. Let's try it again. 3, 2, 1. I'm playing around with a little knee rotation here. And down. All right, I think I want to try that again and do a little bit more knee rotation from this position. All right, so I'm just going to hold this leg up and do some rotations. 3, 2, 1. And that actually felt all right. I'm going to close that up. Try one more thing here. Let's see if I can give my hip some support so that I can actively push down. It's in external rotation. And now I can just try a knee car. So I'm doing my knee car from my butterfly. Reverse. And I think this also shows with my hip externally rotated, I can hardly internally rotate my knee, and my foot does all the work. And relax. So, through all of that, let's recap exactly what we found, all right, and kind of how we got there. Start one joint at a time, all right? Do cars, use it as data points. Find what position your car hurts the most in, and you can do some soft tissue manipulation on tissue, which is basically just self-massage or what you do with a foam roller. Doing it for the short amount of time that we did it, it probably doesn't create much physiological change, but it can create, neurological change, and that can open up windows of movement. Once you deal with one joint, move up to the next joint, see how that one reacts, right? And then move up to the next joint, see how that one reacts. Constantly shifting positions. You just can't have the joints stay in neutral. All right, so you're working internal, external rotation of the knee, internal or supination, pronation, flexion, extension of the ankle, flexion, extension of the knee, and all the ways that the hip can move. So there are literally infinite amount of ways to kind of move one single leg and figure out exactly where that is. So it's kind of like you're putting the pieces of a puzzle together, right? And then trying a bunch of different things, I think I just found that the main thing is that my knee does not internally rotate when my hip is externally rotated. Okay? And so I'm going to, over the course of the next week or so, I'm going to figure out ways to train that as much as I can. Even if it's just slowly starting here, internal rotate, and I can externally rotate the hip, right? Internally rotate the knee, keep the foot neutral, externally rotate the hip, right? So that's a way to kind of work it from the opposite. Instead of externally rotating the hip and trying to internally rotate the knee, you internally rotate the knee and externally rotate the hip. So you're working backwards. All right. Thanks for joining me today, guys. I hope this kind of gave you some insight onto how to fix little injuries, how to kind of work through tissue to see how it's feeling, and hopefully give you insight onto how to fix any kind of pain that you may have. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Thanks. Hope you have a great day.